All right, we are live now. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for Decarcerate and Liberate, a roadmap for freedom for our people. This town hall has been organized by members of the I'm hearing an echo. There we go. Okay. This town hall has been organized by members of the Criminal Justice Circle here at Rise of Kingston to highlight some of the important work that's happening here across the state and in Kingston to move us from a world that is centered on punishment through our criminal legal system to a world that's centered on community care. And tonight we're going to hear from some amazing organizers from some of our partners across the state who are working to ensure that this legislative session, we make real changes to the laws here in New York, and centuries of harm within our criminal legal system are reversed or at least changed a little bit. And in this criminal legal system, we know disproportionately impacts Black and Brown folks. So we want to ensure that we are making some real changes to impact our people, because Black Lives Matter means more than just a hashtag. It means a real change of our systems. So thanks to all of our co-sponsors tonight, Citizen Action of New York, Release Aging People in Prison, the New York Civil Liberties Union Hudson Valley chapter, and Center for Community Alternatives to Our Incarceration. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves in a minute, but want you all out there listening to know that we are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of the panel. So if any questions come up throughout the night, feel free to enter them in the comments. They're on Facebook and we will get to them. But we are going to talk a lot about what we're fighting for, why it's important, and how we're going to win. And that's what you're going to hear about tonight. So first, just want to give everyone this opportunity to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about who you are, your name, your pronouns, and why are you personally engaged in this fight to decarcerate New York and break down our criminal legal system. And I'm going to get started and just throw it over to Marvin. Got a couple minutes. Do you want to tell folks who you are? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, first I
Oh,
have to unmute, right? It works better that way. My bad. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be here in this space with you all and with these other incredible organizers on this panel today. And thanks, Callie, for inviting me and putting this thing together. Really appreciate you. My name is Marvin. I'm Marvin Mayfield. I am the lead statewide organizer with the Center for Community Alternatives. And Center for Community Alternatives, our organization promotes reentry or reintegrative justice, and we work for a reduced reliance on incarceration through advocacy, through direct services, and public policy in pursuit of civil and human rights. We also have direct services that are designed to support currently and formerly incarcerated people, and to just eliminate the pipelines to incarceration and mitigate the criminal legal system, mitigate the harm of the criminal legal system, and through expungement and other civic restoration services. In addition to our direct services, CCA organizes with formerly incarcerated people and families to pursue systemic change and decarcerate New York. When we say that we are a grassroots organization, as far as the organizing and advocacy aspect of it is, we mean grassroots, people who have been there, people who have lived this, people who have been directly impacted. I myself am a person who is directly impacted and formerly incarcerated. And when I had the enlightenment that the system was designed to see Black and brown people like me fail and pretty much be the commodity in the prison industrial complex, I got involved, and I started, and I'm staying involved. And my motivation sometimes is not only to free those people who are physically and mentally enslaved, and but to get some payback for the shit they put me through. So anyway, that's what motivates me. That's why I'm here today, and I am pleased to be here with all you incredible organizers. Thanks, Callie.
Marvin, thank you. Thank you so much for kicking us off in that way. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Jeff Deskovic.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm the founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has its mission to free people who are wrongfully imprisoned and also to work for policy changes aimed at preventing that from happening in the first place. I'm an advisory board member of the coalition group It Could Happen to You, which has chapters in New York, California, Pennsylvania. I volunteer a lot these days, it seems, for RAP, so I'm glad to wear that hat as well. I sit on the Global Advisory Council for Restorative Justice International, which also has an interest in returning citizens returning back to society, crime-free life, productive chance to start over. But in terms of motivation, and I will add that I'm also an attorney and I have a master's degree. My master's thesis is written on wrongful conviction, cause, and reform. My motivation for being involved in justice reform work, both the innocence and obviously the non-innocence issues, which would be the focus of tonight, is that I got to see the justice system up close and personal. So I was wrongfully imprisoned for 16 years. I was arrested at 16 for murder and rape, which I did not commit. I was wrongfully convicted. I lost 7 appeals. I got turned down for parole, and ultimately I was exonerated through further DNA testing, which demonstrated my innocence. So, I'm here to help rectify some of the very many disturbing things that I saw while I was wrongfully imprisoned that were not related to guilt innocence.
Jeff, thank you so much for being here and for all you're doing too. Can't wait to hear more about it. So I'll pass it over next to Stanley Fritz.
Hey, y'all. Good afternoon. My name is Stanley Fritz. I'm the New York State Political and Campaigns Director at Citizen Action of New York and trying to adjust my lighting as I speak. Citizen Action of New York is a statewide grassroots organization that is fighting for social, economic, environmental, and racial justice. We are looking for ordinary people with extraordinary power. That means everybody on this Zoom and all the people watching across Facebook land and all the places where people have interest. They care about their families, they care about their communities, and they want to see a change. We've been doing work around the criminal legal system for the last 3.5, 4 years and have been intricately involved in helping to repeal the old bail law, then having to fight to protect the bail law we got passed, working on marijuana legalization, halt solitary confinement, and are really looking forward to the next steps in the work, including really ramping up our efforts to help end elder parole, and their elder sentencing and really do some big work on parole work. So thanks for having me here, and I'm excited to talk to you folks.
Thanks so much, Stanley. And I just realized that I never said who I am. I am Callie Jane, everyone out there who's listening. I'm the Advocacy and Campaigns Director at Rise Up Kingston. I just jumped right in. So that's who I am. But I'm going to pass it on to Gordon to do just a little quick intro and say who you are too.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gordon Davis. He, him pronouns, and I'll come as a member of Rise Up Kingston and, criminal justice circle. And this is decarceration is important to me because I was also, like everyone else, was incarcerated at the age of 16. And I witnessed firsthand, was a participant observer for 24 years and a half of what the criminal justice system can do to a person. While I was on the inside, though, I used education as the vehicle to try to help others move out and away from, the abnormal environment that we were surrounded in. And so now that I'm home, I believe that advocacy on this level would be the next step in the process that I needed to take in order to fulfill what I once started on the inside. So I'm glad, Callie, thank you for having me here, and everyone else, it's a pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. And last but certainly not least is Noelle Casey.
Thanks, Callie, and to Rise Up Kingston and for all the work that you've been doing and the support that you've given parole. So my name is Noelle Casey. I'm the Westchester Hudson Valley organizer for RAP, Release Aging People in Prison. I'm personally based in Yonkers, but our turf covers this whole area. My pronouns are she, her, and my reason for getting involved in this work is the kind of community that I lived in wasn't touched by mass incarceration and wasn't. So my reason for doing this is to enable to enrich communities like mine and enrich other communities, is that we need our leaders, we need our mentors, we need all the folks who have been taken from us, who have been inside, back and with their families and with our communities so that we can be enriched and and really aided by them in the way that I have in my life and through this work. And so I'm really excited to talk to you more about how we're going to get all these folks home and how we're going to do that. RAP, just shortly, is a legislative advocacy grassroots organizing campaign focused on elder parole and fair and timely, which everybody will be talking about shortly tonight. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Noelle. And I was wrong. Not last. Inno is also here. Has finally landed down. Inno was doing the running around thing. So I'm glad that you were able to get here in front of a computer. Inno, you want to introduce yourself, Inno Powell?
Thank you, Callie. Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Inno. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm here as a member of Rise Up Kingston, and I'm honored to be here because, like, I have no regrets, and I thank God I went through everything I went through just to be here. But I'm here to be here for people who can't be here. Like, it's only right that we do this work because you don't like what you see behind those walls. So you have to do something about it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for being here. We got a great crew of folks. So as I said, we're going to jump in. We're going to do some questions, open it up to, anyone here who wants to respond. And we'll talk about what we're doing, why it's important, and how to take action. And so maybe we'll just start with this big picture question because we talk a lot. We've used this word roadmap and justice roadmap. And maybe we can jump in and Marvin, you can tell us a little bit about, what is the justice roadmap?
Oh, picking on me. Okay.
I'm going to pick on you.
All right, no problem. It'd be my pleasure. Since I do work with the Justice Roadmap quite a bit, and I'd be happy to explain some about what it is. Okay, so what is the Justice Roadmap? The Justice Roadmap is a legislative agenda which was designed to address the harms of and the harms caused by the deeply entangled criminal, legal, and immigration systems. The Justice Roadmap is comprised of and made up of the power of over 200 organizations like ours here that came together, united to make these changes, to make the much needed changes to this harsh, racist, draconian policies that have been disproportionately oppressing Black and brown people in New York, and not just in New York. We know that this condition is not exclusive to New York State alone. It is across this country and across this nation, but our legislation is focused on getting laws passed in New York State. So this is where we started. So, like I said, I know it's not exclusive, but this is where our legislation is targeted. So the Justice Roadmap is something, like I said, is a legislative agenda, and it has different or many campaigns or bills that are being pushed to the legislation that would alleviate the conditions of people who are incarcerated right now. And as Noelle just referred to, which is the parole policy, which is the elder parole, the fair and timely parole. These are components of the Justice Roadmap, and some of the things that we have to celebrate this legislative season, like the passing of the HALT campaign, which ends solitary confinement in New York State. That's something to be celebrated, which is another component of the Justice Roadmap. And the MRTA, the Marijuana Tax Regulation Act, which just recently got passed, that would stop the prohibition and the over-policing of our communities and our young people being harassed and arrested for marijuana possessions. So that's just a few of the things that we're working with on the Justice Roadmap, which, like I said, it also not only addresses criminal legal systems, but also the immigration systems as well. Fighting for legislation that would that would help people who are immigrants or people who are coming home from prison to be compensated like people who are eligible for unemployment. So there's been a fund that's already been established for people who are have been excluded from receiving benefits like that. So like I said, these are just a few components of the Justice Roadmap. And I think one of the most profound and interesting things about the Justice Roadmap is, as I said, it's over 200 organizations that's coming together to help form to help form a group that makes these harsh and these racist systems go away. So we're working toward that.
Thanks so much, Marvin, for that explanation of the Justice Roadmap. Is there anyone else that wants to jump in to talk about, some of the pieces of legislation within the Justice Roadmap? And of course, they're folded into many different campaigns that we're working on and talking about specifically here.
Yeah, I just want to add, when talking about the Justice Roadmap, it's not just about like the legislation that we want to get passed. It's about like the roadmap to shifting the entire system that we have here from being a carceral system to one that not only reduces harm, but moves us away from this idea that the prison industrial complex is going to save us. At the root of it all is the question that like everyone should be asking themselves, particularly those who are watching from Facebook Live, those who are watching this after the fact, and those on this stage, is what does safety look like? Because at our core, what everyone wants is to be safe and feel safe. And society has told us that prisons, jails, the cops, ICE, and all these institutions that are built off of violence against Black and brown people are things that keep us safe. And we keep on seeing that they don't. But then the way that we govern, the way that we try to quote unquote hold people accountable, the systems that we create contradict the things that we know to not be true. And I think the Justice Roadmap does a really good job of not just saying that this is not safety, these are the things we have to implement and also the things we have to remove to get real safety.
Thanks so much for that, Stanley. Is there anyone else who wanted to jump in on that question?
Yeah, Callie, I think I'll jump in just to give a brief overview of the parole bills. I know some of us have mentioned them already, so just so folks sort of know like what we're referring to. Basically, there's two parole bills that are up, and that's one, the elder parole bill, and the second is the fair and timely. Specifically, the elder parole bill helps those who are incarcerated, who are elderly, be seen before the parole board earlier, which helps decarcerate the current carceral system, which, as we know, the numbers of people going into prison have decreased, but the number of folks who are aging in prison and who have stayed in prison is continuing to increase. So people are continuing to languish and die in prison for longer, and who are elderly and who are sick. Especially in COVID, I think the urgency to change this is, should be top priority. So basically what the bill does is for those who are aged 55 and older, who have served at least 15 years of a sentence, automatically qualify for parole and are able to be seen before the parole board. The age number of 55 was chosen because docs itself cited that those who are 58 and older are considered elderly in prison, and that's due to the conditions of aging inside for people, lack of medical care, and all of those sort of disparities that happen for people who are aging in prison. So ours is set at 55, the bill set at 55, so that those who are that age have an opportunity to be seen before the parole board and have a higher chance of being released before they become elderly. The second half of that bill is, the other bill, the part that sort of works in conjunction with it, is the fair and timely, and that allows for those who are facing the parole board, so that's anybody who's up for parole, has the opportunity to basically be seen for the person that they are, rather than the crime that they were charged with, by removing a specific portion of the executive law that allows for the parole board to essentially base their decisions solely on what the nature of the crime is, rather than taking into account all of the various material conditions that lead to why that person was incarcerated, as well as taking into account their transformation, their growth, and how they've spent their time being incarcerated. So specifically, like for RAP, our leader, Mujahid Fareed, was incarcerated for 37 years for the attempted murder of a police officer. but was denied 9 times parole for that very reason, despite having earned 4 college degrees, master's degrees, creating an HIV and AIDS education program that has sort of been withstanding throughout New York State prisons since his time, was a leader, was a mentor, and was really a transformed person, had done his time, had been, and did substantial work with his time to help those who also were inside, but was continuously denied parole, specifically based on the nature of his crime, which is also connected to the sort of the makeup of the parole board, which we can maybe get into a little bit later. But basically, those are the 2 bills that are up, and basically these bills are essentially like hopeful. They're not automatic release. They're not going to guarantee that folks are going to get out if they are seen before the parole board and, are deemed not ready to be released. That's a separate issue, but essentially this allows for people to have hope to be released, and for the process of, if we, are saying that rehabilitation is the goal, then we can release people who are rehabilitated, people who have served their time, people who have been in prison for 20, 30, 40 years, to return home to their families, to return to their communities, and to give back, and to, be free and not have to die and live in prison the way that they have been. So that's essentially the 2 bills. And I think, maybe other folks can jump into to say, what their thoughts on are the 2 bills and some other points of it. But those are essentially what they do and what they will do.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, Jeff, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Sure. In terms of what I think about the 2 bills that Noel just mentioned. So while I was wrongfully imprisoned, I did go to the parole board, and when I got the parole board decision, it referenced that I had an excellent educational record, that I had a good disciplinary record, but that nonetheless, because I had been convicted of a brutal and senseless crime, they were, going to decline to parole me, that they said that it would deprecate its seriousness. So basically, I was denied parole based on nature of the crime. I also want to add, it didn't go over well with them, that rather than express remorse and take responsibility, that I instead stood on my innocence. That was also a factor. So nature of the crime is something that was, never going to change. It was already known on day 1 before the first day in prison was served. The judge already took that into account in fashioning a sentence. So by the parole board denying parole based on nature of the crime, they're in effect resentencing people. The idea of denying parole based on nature of the crime totally ignores rehabilitation. I mean, that's the whole point of doing vocational trades, improving education, doing therapeutic programs, which are designed to address the crime for which somebody is incarcerated. So I personally saw how it demotivated a lot of prisoners. I mean, people literally told me, well, what's the point in doing all these different programs or rehabilitating myself for, Jeff? I'm not going to go home anyway. So I want to add that. And in terms of the elder parole bill, that means a lot to me, because I saw a lot of prisoners there who were guilty of serious crimes, but that was 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30 years ago. They clearly were not the same person any longer. A lot of them were serving as role models. Some of them were literally living in honor block in the prison. Didn't seem to me that anything productive or positive was going to come out of their continued incarceration. But beyond that aspect of it, and keeping in mind that there are a lot of prisoners who have come home who've made substantial contributions to society, whether that's in the capacity of being a teacher, working in nonprofit settings, doing prisoner reentry work, diverting at-risk youth from a life of crime and ultimately ending up in prison. So really, as a society, we lose out when people who are deserving of their freedom are not granted it. But beyond that aspect of it, the prison simply was not capable of dealing with the advanced medical needs that happen when prisoners get elderly. I saw prisoners there who were literally pushed around in the prison, as in they were in wheelchairs. They were hunched over, walking with canes. Some were bedridden. Still others had were going to dialysis regularly. Some of them were so ill they didn't even live in a cell block. They lived in the hospital that was located on the prison grounds. There is a such thing as aging out of crime. People mellow out. When you're younger, you're more spontaneous, susceptible to peer pressure, not thinking about the long term. So there's that aspect to it as well. Maybe just tied into that, and then I'll sign off. I don't want to take too much time, but I do think that in considering elder parole and elderly prisoners, that just the issue of compassionate release should be briefly mentioned, which is that if a prisoner is deemed to be terminally ill, they can apply for compassionate release, which means they would be able to die with some dignity while being free, having a little bit of last moments with their family. And despite that policy being in place, the system was so inefficient that often by the time those decisions came down, the prisoner either died a day or two prior to getting that decision, or it took so long they had a day or two left. So those are all worth considering in terms of the context of the parole bills. There are related parole issues that all the commissioner posts are not filled, so that creates a backlog. It's not timely. But beyond that, we need to have greater balance when it comes to the background of the parole commissioners. We're going to stack the parole board with people that are formerly working in law enforcement, and that's really what most of them are. Those are all political appointments by the governor. So when we don't have it reflecting the diversity of viewpoints, then we're going to have the situation now that we often have, which is that parole is denied. The parole board is there supposed to be assessing who's been rehabilitated, as demonstrated by your disciplinary record, as demonstrated by programs you've completed, and giving back. But if we're going to just deny by nature of the crime, which is what a lot of the law enforcement types do, rather than assessing rehabilitation, then we're not going to get anywhere in terms of that. And lastly, there's a disturbing practice, which I personally experienced, which is that I didn't even get a parole board hearing in person. It was via closed circuit television. There was a lag between the audio and video. I could not make eye contact with the parole board commissioners. I could not establish a rapport. I couldn't determine if the points I was making in support of my freedom, that it was understood and I could move on. Did I need to stop and explain something? The whole thing was just dehumanizing. I felt was lack of respect. And too often, these parole board decisions, they're not really being influenced at all by the actual parole interview. The decisions are predetermined ahead of time. And so all those things need to change if we're going to have comprehensive parole reform. And there is movement towards all of those issues. Some of them are in forms of bills, and some of them are not yet introduced, but are definitely on the radar with respect to the Justice Reform Act.
Jeff, thank you so much for all of that. That's really important information for folks to get and understand, because sometimes people, really just don't know what's happening and why this is so necessary. Yeah, and like we said, within Justice Roadmap, there's a lot of different pieces of legislation. Some that we passed this year already, which Marvin talked about a little bit. The Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, halt solitary confinement, which due to some incredible organizing on the ground, for years and years and years and years, that's what got those things done. So that's really, really important and exciting for us to see that, organizing gets the goods. You can keep fighting and you can win things, and especially when sometimes, things feel so bleak. So I want to bring it back to just another piece of legislation or, another campaign within the Justice Roadmap. I know there's an advocacy day coming up, so I'm going to pick on you again, Marvin. I'm going to throw it back to Marvin to talk a little bit about the Clean Slate campaign.
Okay, thanks, Callie. I'd be happy to briefly. New York, the Clean Slate New York campaign is fighting for a new law that will automatically clear New Yorkers' criminal record. And we're talking about automatic expungement here. Once they become eligible, forgive me for not having it right on point, but I know there's a certain amount of time, 3 years or 5 years for certain categories where they become automatically eligible for expungement. And the collateral damage of the criminal conviction can be like wide ranging and enduring and creates a condition of perpetual punishment, barring people from basic opportunities like employment and housing because of background checks. A person would not be granted housing, which is one of the basic necessities of a person returning from jails and prisons that want to get their life in order. So the Clean Slate New York is about strengthening our communities by ensuring that New Yorkers are not perpetually punished beyond what they've already been sentenced, so they can be full and fair participants in, in society and economic civic life. So as many as 1 in 3 New Yorkers has had contact with the criminal justice system, and those records follow you forever. One person told me, he said every sentence is a life sentence. Every sentence is a life sentence because these records follow you around. Every day in our direct services, we're faced with people who have barriers to housing, barriers to employment because of a criminal record. The Clean Slate New York is about creating a fairer, a clean slate, so to speak, for a person to be able to apply for jobs without automatically having these things hang over their head. Like I said, many people are challenged with this, and the Clean Slate New York is having an advocacy day coming up on the April 29th. And we will be, and like any other advocacy day, when we used to converge on Albany, we'll be having groups and meeting with legislators to push this agenda forward and let people know that perpetual punishment is not something that we're going to tolerate anymore in New York State. So thanks, Kylie, for letting me explain that a little bit. But if you will, I'm just so, if you'll bear with me for a minute, I'm just so enthused by the work that we've done. And you just mentioned those 2 things. And I wish my colleague, Jerome Wright, was here to explain the halt solitary, because he does it so well and so passionately. And I feel that I should be able to talk about this in his absence. But, the halt solitary campaign was a campaign that we've been pushing for 8 years. And finally we got it pushed over the over the finish line, and it's now signed into law. One of the drawbacks of it is it doesn't completely eliminate solitary confinement or segregated confinement, whatever they call it. It's still the same thing. You're confined to a cell by yourself. But the Nelson Mandela rules adopted by the United Nations define segregated confinement for more than 15 days as torture and cruel and unusual punishment. The halt solitary campaign has brought New York into compliance with this international standard, and in doing so, it saves the state tens of millions of dollars over the next several years, right? So this has been passed. I want to thank the legislators who worked hard on it, but mainly this is a victory for the people who are on the ground, for those who have been directly impacted, for those who watched their loved ones languish and deteriorate in a cage, and to the men and women that shared their stories of survival, and sadly some that did not survive, and to all the advocates and stood on the front lines. This is our victory. We need to celebrate it. But this law, it comes a little too late for some people like Laylene Polanco, Khalif Browder, and Benjamin Van Zandt, names that we can't and won't forget, and the countless others who suffered in solitary confinement. This legislation was overdue, but it's the right thing to do. So I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone who worked on that campaign, who stood on the front lines, who yelled, no more solitary confinement. This is our victory, and it's high time that we had it. So thanks, Kelly. I thought I just had to give a shout out on that one.
Yeah, no, that's great. And thanks for saying that, because, there was definitely a lot of hey, ho, ho, solitary has got to go up there in Albany.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, that's right. That's
That
right.
was
We
good.
won't forget it.
I see Jeff's hand again, and I wanted to see too if Stanley wanted to jump in on any other thoughts about what we passed. But Jeff, you want to jump in?
Yeah, a couple things. I'll be quick. On the issue of criminal records following people, I want to mention that during the course of my 16 years of wrongful incarceration, I saw a lot of people that did in fact come back to prison, and when I would speak to them, and they would say that I really couldn't get jobs. Employment interviews were going very, very well. It seemed like they were about to hire me, and then, got to the part about my record, and that was the end of that. Or a variation of that where people said, well, they did not disclose their record, but then when it was uncovered through the, background checks, that, job offers were then withdrawn. So I wanted to mention that aspect of that. And I have heard people, since I've been home, socialize with people that are on parole, and they also report, difficulty in obtaining employment, but as a society, we have to realize that when people with records that are otherwise deserving of jobs that have the qualifications, when they're denied employment, as a society, we're losing out, because what happens is that the temptation to return back to crime, to return back to the old ways, it increases. And so now, rather than having somebody that's paying into the tax base, we're instead going to pay $72,000 a year in order to incarcerate them. So there's that aspect. And then the related point, ban the box, which is related to this, which would address the disturbing practice, and this would involve employment, but then also the disturbing practice, educational institutions requiring applicants to check a box about whether they've been incarcerated or not, and have that be a factor in determining whether they're going to be allowed to pursue university education. To me, that's backwards, because obviously if someone is attempting to get into a university, they must have crime-free plans. So to deny that, I think, again, it heightens the risk of recidivate. So I'll stop here. Hopefully at some point later on, I would like to talk a little bit about solitary, because I did spend 28 days there, but I'll stop now, because I know I have colleagues on the call with me.
Thanks so much, Jeff, for all your sharing. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I just want to just jump in real quick and talk about marijuana legalization and also solitary confinement, and not necessarily explicitly about the bills, but the work that has to happen after the fact. So one of the big lessons that we learned after we passed the bail law in New York State was that, we couldn't just like walk away from it and be like, this is the law. There was a lot of work that needed to happen in the communities so that folks could understand what we had done, and also see how it helped them and improve their quality of life, as well as help to reduce harm. We failed at that goal. And instead, what happened, the right-wing groups, the police, the GOP, the DAs, and correction officers built out this crazy fear tactic campaign in which they were telling everyone that someone would shoot a puppy and would not be able to go to jail because of the bail law, and then they would kill 10 people. And before you knew it, we had the entire state that supported bail reform the year before was totally against it and wanted it rolled back. And now we're starting to see that same kind of like right-wing messaging. Now that we've legalized marijuana, now that we've legalized HALT, now that we're pushing harder for elder parole and clean slate, they're already trying to scare people. And it's really important that we do the work to have conversations with folks to help them understand why these are good things. The Marijuana Legalization and Tax Act is a monumental bill, because not only does it legalize marijuana, but 40% of the proceeds of the revenue made from selling marijuana in the state have to go to directly impact the communities. Another 20% has to go to fund public school. The rest of it is towards drug rehabilitation and small grants. 50% of the licenses have to go to people who have been directly impacted by the war on drugs. So that means that you're not like, the licenses are not going to Fresh Direct or that big corporation in your neighborhood. They're going to you. They're also going to be giving people grants so that they can participate in the process. This is a major shift in power, but they're saying that people are going to become drug addicts and everyone is afraid. And if we don't protect this bill and educate people on this bill to make sure that they know how good it is and how transformational it is for our communities, they're going to repeal the bill. So a big part of any bill or campaign you push is to get your proposed bill passed, but then you absolutely have to do the work after the fact to make sure it stays. So whether it's elder parole, when we get that passed, solitary confinement, marijuana legalization, clean slate, once we get that through, the fight doesn't end there. It is just the beginning, friends.
Hey, thank you. Can I jump in, Stanley? And I'm Kayla Kelly. I'm sorry, because I mean, Stanley, what you said is so so accurate, and we did take away some major lessons with the rollbacks to bail reform, and what you said is absolutely true. We won some victories, we won some legislation and got it passed. Legislation is one thing, results are another. So when these things are implemented, we have to stay on point, stay vigilant, and watch and make sure that these things don't get repealed, because our opposition does not sleep, and we cannot rest on the laurels of our seeming victories, right? Because trust me, they're scheming right now about how they can circumvent some of the procedures of solitary confinement. I've heard it, I've seen it, and we are in the process of having our state legislators go into the jails and prisons across the state with surprise visits to see how implementation is going in regards to solitary and other issues such as COVID protocols. Because our Department of Corrections, they are notorious for being shrouded in secrecy and cover-ups. So this is something that we are doing to make sure that the implementation of these hard fought for and won legislation is being accurately and honestly implemented. So we got to stay on point, got to stay on top of it. And thanks, Stanley, for bringing that up.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking about that, because it is really important, just the sign of the pen, there's another sign of the pen too. And, we have to stay on top of things. And even with the MRTA, we've been looking a lot into making sure folks know their rights, because we're hearing a lot of really foolish stuff about like how folks are going to go out and smoke weed, and I think there's important things to look at even at the local level too, because cities and towns and villages will have options, to be able to like opt out of having like dispensaries or social consumption sites. And so there's still things for people to be paying attention to. Yes, to keep the law, and also to just like pay attention to what's happening and ensure that, yes, they do say that they want 50% to be people who have been most impacted. But we got to make sure that's the case, because, in many other states, folks that are running all of these dispensaries that look like Apple stores do not look like me. So
you said that, you got that right. And I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I just have to bring this up about the MRTA. And for so long in our over police communities, the police have been using this tactic or this pretense of, I smell weed, right, to make arrests, to stop, frisk, harass, and everything else. So not only does the MRTA eliminate the odor of weed as an excuse for police to harass us, but it provides automatic expungement of the records for marijuana convictions that is, for things that are now legal. So if you were once convicted of 3 ounces or less, which many people were, you can have those records expunged automatically. And one of the questions that we do get a lot from our members is that, so the question remains, can I still get arrested for weed? Yeah, but you gotta try really hard at it. Because just like liquor and cigarettes, weed is going to be regulated and taxed, and you can still be arrested for the unlicensed sale of over a pound or selling to a minor. So, and one of the other questions I get often is, can we smoke in public now? Yeah, you can smoke in public. But still, just like cigarettes or tobacco products, you cannot smoke where it is currently prohibited. It's a sign that with a little cigarette with this slash through it, no, please, you'll get a ticket. So those are some of the things that have changed with the MRTA as well.
Wait, Marvin, I want to add also,
oh, go ahead.
For those of you with a green thumb, you can grow up to 6 plants in your house. 3 fully grown plants. I saw some people stood up when I said that. 3 fully grown plants and 3 baby plants you can grow. And you can carry up to 6 ounces on you without being criminalized. I don't know why you would need 6 ounces of weed while just traveling, but you never know. So that's another great thing. They can't arrest you for suspicion of the smell of marijuana, of like burnt marijuana, or just the marijuana plant in general. So that's great. But if you live in public housing, you still can't smoke it there. However, they are allowing for smoke shops where you can like have edibles, weed, but you can't sell liquor. So it's a pretty good.
But I just want to be really real for a second too, because I actually, spending the day looking at this just based on all the conversations I've had over the past couple of weeks, and it could be, another 18 months, 2 years before we're allowed to grow plants and have plants. It could be a while before we have social consumption sites. And like, there is no legal way to get weed right now, because you still cannot buy it legally in this state. So I just want to put that out there to anyone who is listening, so no one's like, well, Stanley said. And also, you cannot smoke in your car even when it's parked. These are things I've been digging, y'all. We got to pay attention. But it is a huge, big change. I'm going to also say know your rights and know the reality of what cops do. So,
Thanks, Callie.
yeah.
And be careful of going across state lines with marijuana. So that's one of the big issues that can get you caught up. Because it's legal here doesn't mean it's legal somewhere else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why it's so important to be on top of and paying attention to all the things that are happening. I want to jump in, because we were definitely talking about some of the things that we were trying to, some of the things we won, which is amazing. But also there's so much that we are still working on, getting past, specifically we talked about, fair and timely parole, elder parole, clean slate. Maybe can we talk a little bit about like what's it like up in Albany? What's the political landscape? Who's with us? Who's not with us? What do we need to do? Because I was told we had this magic supermajority and that all the good things would come. So I'm just wondering why, like on first month, all these folks aren't jumping in. So those of you who spend all your time in Albany, maybe Stanley or Noel, do you want to talk a little bit about what's happening?
I've talked a lot, so I want to see the thoughts in the well first, and then I can go after. If that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Stanley. Yeah, so I think there's with the supermajority, there is a lot of opportunity for the movement that we're hoping for. And I think there's a lot of growth and development, but I think they're only, all these legislators, Democrats, Republicans, whoever, are only going to be pushed by the work that we're doing, the kind of work that we're talking about, to how Stanley said, like the folks like doing the education, the political education that we need to really change people's minds, establish stigmas that people have, and really focus on how we're going to restructure what society looks like and what communities look like and what community safety looks like, and all of that sort of stuff. In terms of the parole bills, I can tell you that we're only 4 co-sponsors away from having majority support for the fair and timely bill in the Senate, and only 7 away from having majority support of elder parole. So there's definitely a lot of movement. I think in the Assembly, there's a little bit more in terms of the numbers. I think it's somewhere between like 20 and 25 people. So I think there's a little bit more movement, and the kind of work we're doing to call legislators, to have meetings, to have our advocacy days, have the Freedom Hours, to call Andre Stewart Cousins and Carl Hastie, the Assembly Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader, to have them sort of know that this is having large support from across the state, not just little pockets and not just communities that are impacted, but also from folks who know that this is what the right thing is to do, to know that we need we're not all free until everybody is actually free. So I think that's very much what we're trying to do and what we're trying to prove to everybody in the legislature. I think we talked a little bit about, Marvin mentioned the rollbacks on bail, and how that was sort of like a learning process for organizers. And I think also then that sort of spooked legislators to think that in maybe more conservative or more areas where there wasn't maybe as broad support, that that they maybe needed to roll back on their progressive legislation or their support for those things. So I think to ensure that we have the broad support, we need to keep doing things like this. We need to keep educating, like Stanley said, and we need to make sure that we're educating our folks about this, and having the folks who are impacted lead us in this fight. So I think there's movement in Albany, but I think it's often a slow turning wheel. I think, as everybody knows, I think HALT is an example of that it's sort of a no-brainer that should be something that was passed, but it took many years for folks to come around to supporting it publicly. And then, of course, all the legislators run to saying that they've supported it despite the years of opposition. So I think it's a slow turning wheel, but I think the more sort of people get involved in the more progressive policies that we keep having and we force them into doing what we elected them to do, then I think, that's sort of where we're going to be moving. So I think it's slow moving, but we're chugging along and we're pushing the train to move faster. So I think that's a little overview. I don't know, Stanley, if you want to say something better than what I said.
Very much doubt I could say something better than what you said. I think you really hit a lot of the nails in the head. The simple answer, to just repeat what Noel said, is grounded in organizing. Yeah, we have a super majority, but like these are Democratic senators, but they're not all in solidly Democratic districts. Some of them, particularly those of them in Western New York and the suburbs, are in districts where you could actually lose to a Republican. And those suburban parts of their districts push back really hard. So they hesitate. And that's why it's important that we're organizing and building power in those spaces. So when maybe a Summer Brook, who's actually been pretty good, I don't want to knock her, but when a Summer Brook is like, well, I can't support this, you can pull up to her office with 50 people from the suburbs who's like, nah, we support this. What are you doing? That's really important. And then also, I cannot speak enough to how much people fear the governor. And we were able to get so much of this done because the governor is a creep and he finally got caught being a creep. And hopefully we can get him out of office for good. But no matter what their strategy is, you have to account for the governor. The majority leader does not like the governor, doesn't like to work with him too much, but she does. And she's professional and she listens to her conference. Whereas the speaker tends to have a bit of a heavier hand. I wouldn't say he's a fan of the governor, but he tends he'll probably leverage the governor to get what he wants more often. And you got to have a plan for both those pieces right there, which is why it's always important to be doing strategy charts, to be doing power analysis, to be connecting and working with other groups so that we can have a full picture of the state. I'm from Harlem. I don't know what you guys are doing in Rochester or what's happening in Kingston, which is why I'm glad I have amazing friends like Callie to school me. So that's all I want to add to Noel's comment.
Thanks so much, both of you. I know, Marvin, you wanted to add on to this.
Oh yeah, I feel like I don't want to be too down in this conversation, but it's like I have to jump on this just a little bit because Noel and Stanley were both so correct in your assessment of what's going on with the political landscape in Albany and why things are not moving the way they should be. And yes, we did take away some lessons from bail reform, but remember 50A, all right? We learned lessons from 50A as well, which was legislation that would promote police accountability, right? And stop protecting bad cops and bad COs and things like that. So we learned from that as well that legislation was on the back burner for years, right? And we've been pushing for it, and with no no momentum in sight. Then it was the organizers, it was the people on the ground that said, you know what? And it was the height of George Floyd, it was the height of Breonna Taylor, and there was so much public outcry and so much momentum. This is the type of momentum that we have to create, right? With the organizers, with the people on the ground that say that we're going to push this across the finish line. And we know that our legislators are motivated by votes. The things they want to do is stay in office. So we want to make sure that they get the message, right? So that they are not afraid to go and stand up for a bill and knowing that their constituency is completely behind them. And that is up to the organizers. That is up to us to make sure that we get this message out and get these things pushed out. We did learn a lesson from bill reform, but we learned from 58 as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've got to learn from every moment, and I'm glad you all said all of that because, sometimes people think that, someone's elected who said they were going to do a thing and that we could just walk away. We don't hire somebody and then come back in 2 years and be like, how'd it go? It is our responsibility to hold them accountable to doing the things that we want them to do, and so many groups. I mean, we did it here in Kingston. It happens all over the state. We're at a point as community organizers who are writing pieces of legislation and saying, here, make this, pass this, because we know those who are most impacted have the solutions and really know. Um, so thanks all for talking about that. I want to jump in and kind of start pointing some questions a little bit towards Gordon. I see you come on camera, Gordon, and and Jeffrey too. But of course, anyone can jump in. I know a few folks have to hop off, so whatever magic you need to do that magic. But want to jump in and talk a little bit more about why this is so important. Because for some folks, like we talk about legislation in Albany and the Capitol and bills and laws and Senate and Assembly. And it's like, well, what is this, right? Like, well, like it doesn't make sense. Um, and so want to like break this down to like people and community and neighbors and family and all of that, and really just thinking about how people are impacted by the system now, this racist criminal legal system. Um, and so I guess the first question I'll just put out, to again whoever wants to answer it, is how are our communities most impacted when people are ripped out and put into cages? Like just like big question, like, how is this criminal legal system impacting our communities?
So we could just hop in. Okay, so I feel like the biggest impact is like, imagine like you're a kid like you're outside playing, right? And then you see cops come up and arrest someone. Like you may know them, you may not know them, but when you do know them, that's even more traumatic. Cause it's like, I mean, especially in a kid's mind, they may not know that this person has done wrong or is accused of doing wrong. They just know that someone they know is being bothered by the cops. And then it's like this person, whoever this person may be and whatever they have done, you don't know what they've done for the community. And then it's like this person, you don't know what this person been through, reason being why they did what they did, or even how this person thinks. And then they're thrown into a box or they're thrown into a cage and they're left to deal with it on their own. And that's another part about like it's just like more than the family is affected when you throw people in jail. I feel like I truly believe that like there's a lot of leaders in every community, and given the proper resources, they can make a lot happen for themselves and those around. But it's also like it's a nonstop traumatic experience, especially in neighborhoods that consist of mostly brown and black people. And like I said, whether you know this person or not, it affects you, especially as a child. And then it's like you're seeing this and you're hearing the narrative or like the same rhetoric that like, cops are bad. Cops are bad. And then they grow up, they hating cops too. It's just BS being passed down, but nobody really dealing with the truth of it all. It's just the simple fact. Well, just go back to how the system was made and who's always affected the harshest. And it's just a continuous chain that just literally never stops. And it affects everyone they know, people they don't even know, and it's like you take people out of the community and then people move into the community, gentrification, and then it's like all these new rules come to play, and then it's just a non-stop continuous cycle where it's like let's see what the problem may be and let's help this person versus always let's just get this person out of here for a long time, because nobody knows how people were raised or what they go through. And then, like, even if you have a gist of it, you never really know why people are here doing the things that they do. And I just think, like, it affects one, it affects all.
Thank you, for really talking about like the system and all of that. I'm gonna just say Stanley, Gordon, and then Jeff. I know everyone's like, I want to talk on this one. Stanley, did you want to jump in, or do we want to go to Gordon? All right, maybe Stanley's having some tech difficulties. All right, Gordon, you're up. It's your turn, and then
All right.
Jeff.
All right. Well, I'm gonna use a term for this one, and it's called metabolic rift. So the concept of metabolic rift is when you take the nutrients out of one area to the point it no longer flourishes, it is no longer able to grow and do anything because you removed all nutrients from that process. And when we look at that regarding our communities, the people, the brothers, the sisters, fathers, those are the nutrients of those communities. And when you remove them, now you're not leaving room for these communities to flourish ever again. And this is designed. And we also have a fight that we've been fighting for the longest, urban renewal, redlining, um, benign neglect. These are some things that we've been fighting for ages already. Now you expect us to now flourish somehow when you now taking all the nutrients out of our communities. And this is
Preach.
what and this is why this is important, because we can't move forward without those people that help us grow in our communities. One thing is strange because people don't understand that, you're not giving the communities the money that they need to survive. For ages, people in prison was not even counted in the districts that they come from. So therefore, the money was going to places where the prisons were located. So all the funds that's supposed to go to these communities was now going somewhere else. And now you don't want to give us funds for the community, and you taking the people. So what are you leaving the communities left with? So this is important for me because it affects home. And I have friends that's been incarcerated for so long. I speak to their families on a regular basis, and their families are struggling. You know, they waiting for the moment. And some people in their hearts like, am I still gonna be alive when my father come home, when my brother come home? And these are things that's affecting the community because you're taking all of the drive out of them. You're taking all of the energy out of the people. And I see this on a constant basis. And I know for firsthand what the effect of, people getting denied parole can do. I have friends that's still incarcerated and they've been in the board many times. And I still speak to them, and it's like you can hear the fight is leaving. Their dreams and goals begin to fade. And this is something that people need to understand, because how long can a person go on without hope? We all live each day, and also we wake up to say today's going to be better than yesterday. But now for a person that's incarcerated who's got hit at a parole, that day is no longer here. It's like now this process starts all over again. And they fighting, and it's a hard thing to do. I've seen grown men cry, like, and I'm not saying we're not supposed to, but in an abnormal environment of prison is a rarity. But when you see that, that's when it really affects home. And it's like, there's no explanation for that. There's not even words for that. Sometimes you just embrace your brother, and we don't even say nothing because no words can come and explain how you feeling right now. And it's like your life has been taken away from you once again. So each chance, you say, oh, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better, it's been removed. And you know how many years like we waited, like, yo, there's a bill on the table. Everybody's hype. We waiting. There's a bill on the table. There's a bill on the table. It got to the point where it's like, we don't even care no more. I don't even want to hear about bills no more because we waited all this time, and every time we got shut down. That's just like the parole board. You waited all this time, you go there, and you get shut down. It's like, is life really meaningful? And we must pay respect to John McKenzie. A lot of people don't understand who John McKenzie was. John McKenzie started the cycle for us that was in prison. After his 10th board, he was denied 10 times at the board. He committed suicide because it was too overwhelming for him. And that process changed a lot of mindsets in the prison and also outside the prison. Things start to move from that point on. But it shouldn't have to be sacrifices like that, because everybody deserves a second chance. And you hit the man 10 times, he's 70 years old, and you say no still. Like, how long can you keep doing this? And it's like, those are the type of things that I saw that affect me hardest. I see people get denied, I understand. But when a person takes his life, that means the fight is completely gone. And we must remember, in the suicide, the mind dies first. The action is always later. So he was living with that for a while.
Oh, Gordon, thank you so much. That I've like never thought of it in that way. The nutrients, like the way you're explaining that, like we're all like, preach. That's really important to think about that. Stanley did have to hop, so we can pass it right on to Jeff to kind of answer that question about how our community is really just impacted when people are pulled out and thrown into cages.
Well, people lose out on their family, mother, those, women, men and women that are arrested. I mean, that's someone's mother, father, son, daughter, may be grandparents as well. So just the breaking down of the family. But then there's also sometimes the person who's incarcerated that is the breadwinner for the family. And so now the person that's making the most income from that household is incarcerated, and so they can't do that anymore and actually needs financial support themselves, that leaves the rest of the family, disoriented. And I do believe that can dramatically impact, the trajectory of a child's life.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, and it's really important for folks to really understand that, this is a system. This is something, from the war on drugs, well, before that, but war on drugs, we've really looked at, just families, parents being torn out of families, mothers left alone to try to raise children, men who are that, or boys that are told they have to be the men of the family, which then like uplifts and, patriarchy and all that, misogyny, and just like the impacts of just not having family around, when folks just, are pulled out. um and maybe I'll jump into the next question, um about how does the system further harm people who have mental health and mental health issues, including drug addiction. Or Gordon, I don't know which one of you, both of you came up, Gordon, you came up with this question, so I'm gonna throw it to you for a minute.
It's that's. I think someone brought it up earlier, Jeff. I think it was you, and you was talking about the treatment of people in prison, the medical staff, and so that's a very important issue that people need to understand as well, because the medical staff in prison is below the lowest level that you can think of. There are one or two, good individuals who actually try to do best, but when it comes to mental health, it's something that they're not used to. And so therefore they don't know how to respond to a mental health issue. And therefore the process continues and the person, further, deteriorates mentally because there's nowhere to help and there's nobody who they can really relate to. So prison affects the mental in all ways because it's an abnormal environment for one. And so by it being an abnormal environment, you do a lot of inhumane things and you consider it normal. And so therefore, your mental level is already shifting into a way of surviving in the mix of chaos and everything else. And what happens in this mix, you become lost in a way. And mental health for people that is not only something, it doesn't have to be something you're born with. People develop mental health issues. And this is what prison does for people as well. People develop, depression, anxiety, develop certain traits that now makes them a mental health candidate because of their environment, the environment that, becomes all they know. And you start to live and act the process of living a life other than yourself. And so therefore there's no fixing. That's why when people get out, they have these post-traumatic stresses and they have these post-traumatic issues that they can't get rid of. And so what they turn to drugs or they turn to some form of violence to unleash what they can't express, or they don't know how it got there, or they don't know how to deal with it. And in prison, they don't know that a person is suffering from mental health. We have that issue on the outside. So imagine how severe it is on the inside where people really don't care. This out in society is a process that people been speaking to for a minute. So the people understand that there's a need for it. But on the inside, it's like we are so far behind in the prison. Like mental health is considered probably how they looked at mental health in the 40s and 50s. So they really are outdated when it comes to issues. So when they respond to certain things, they're not responding to, okay, maybe this guy has a mental health issue. Let's talk and let's see where we can develop and not come with the first act being violence. And so mental health also increased because of the violence that people face in prison. You know, so it's like Eno mentioned earlier about the kid, like kids fear police for some reason. Like as a child, I never nobody had to tell me to fear the police. I just did it. I don't know where it come from, but it came from, and I was probably in the gestation process and everything else that my parents went through. But now it's like that in prison. Like you hold on to so many things. You get physically abused, you get mentally abused, and you don't say nothing, and it just builds up until one day you explode. So therefore, your now mental state, your capacity of surviving has really deteriorated. Like even when I got home, I still had visions I was still in prison. I still called my room a cell for a long time after I got out of prison. And I keep catching myself like, oh, I just did it again. I just called my room a cell. Or I went to the store I forgot I had my razor in my pocket. Oh, I was scared to death. I'm in this society. Why am I scared I got my razor in my pocket? I'm not. But these are certain things that now affect my mental because of the place and the environment I was in.
Gordon, thank you. Thank you. So was and then Jeff?
Hey, yeah. Can you just ask your question again so that
Yeah.
I
So
know
just
it?
like, yeah, like how does the criminal legal system, further harm folks who have mental health issues and suffer from drug addiction?
Like this is almost. I mean, this might sound redundant to say this, but it's almost as if the system wasn't built to rehabilitate. Like it wasn't built to try to reintegrate people back into society. It was just built to hold you in place for as long as they can. And for a person that doesn't have mental health issues, but maybe they always been a follower, maybe they've always shown weak-minded. One second.
We love the babies in this movement, future generation. If you want, we can go to Jeff and come back. Do you want to do that? It's up to you. Are you good? All right, go.
I'm good. So, but it's like Gordon was right. People who like you can develop mental health issues out of any traumatic experience, right? But it's like imagine a person who's always showed these mental health issues. Like I can honestly say for myself, right? My mother died when I was young. So when she died, of course there was like a bunch of anger, sadness, and not necessarily knowing myself at that age. So there was a lot just going on within me, that nobody, my aunts, my grandmothers, nobody around me close. I mean, people in the neighborhood. I mean, I was literally like homeless out there, and nobody could reach out and help or wanted to or even did. But it's like after time, I ended up in a place where it was just myself, like I wish before I had even gotten there, like me myself, I've always felt like I was strong, but I also knew that something was wrong with me, or always felt like something was wrong with me, something was wrong with me, and I didn't know how to seek help. So you get into this position where now you're behind these walls and it's just you. And when I say it's just you, because it's like I had a problem with authority. I didn't want to hear nothing, don't say nothing to me. So of course I was immediately sent to the box. And then for most of my time I stayed in the box. So that just left me with myself and God. And even then I'm too angry to turn to him. Now somebody weaker with a weaker mind. Like I've met people who went through the system and like before they got there, like in county jail, like they thought they were everything. But once they got to the big house, they started to cut their body up, lose their mind. And I was just like, I didn't understand how. But it's also like you're locked in this box with just you and you can't deal with yourself. Imagine what you had to deal with outside of these walls, and like how did you maintain this by what? Being able to dabble in drugs, being able to drink, or just being able to do whatever you chose to do, but just have a minor escape of yourself. But in prison it's just you, and you got to deal with what's going on around you. So if a lot of these females is in here doing the most and you're a weak-minded individual, and like the officers is not going to be like, hey, stay away from that crowd. They want you to get in the mix. So they got a reason to take you out. And it's crazy because it's like it's just it doesn't help. Prison is like the way it is right now, it doesn't rehabilitate. Like I've been to places where there was never even a psychologist in the building, let alone a therapist. And then it's like, oh, they want you to talk to the chaplain. Okay. It's just we need a system based around, like, I want to say we need people in neighborhoods trying to get people in those same neighborhoods to be doctors, to be therapists, to grow up and just be great so that they can help someone versus, let's just watch them grow up and let's throw away the key on them because they're going to be that anyway because of certain areas that you may live in. And that is just so like it's cool. Cops come around, wave, how you doing? But the same little kid they wave at in about 5-10 years, I'll be the same kid they chasing down the block and don't even care that they seen this little boy grow up. And it's like mental health. It's like we're born in traumatic situations, like from the jump. And it's sad because maybe the people who birthed us or God made it, like guided us here, they don't know how to help us because nobody ever helped them. And like being real, it's only 2021, but 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, like it was shut your mouth. Don't tell my business. So it's like even that generation, they don't know how to speak up. They're not going, they don't want to speak up out of just, I would just call it what it is, fear. And they may fear what isn't even walking this earth anymore. It's just something that was instilled. And then when it comes to mental health, oh, shut your mouth. How dare you? That doesn't exist. And like me, I mean, I'm black and I'm beyond proud that God chose this is like this skin for me to be in. But it's also like amongst us black folks, like mental health is so real because we don't even realize we're dealing with traumatic things that didn't even happen to us. But then like we're dealing with what we went through, but it's also like we went through what we went through because those before us didn't even know how to handle it. So it's like, where does the cycle stop? And then it's like the system always got to go back to the system because I mean, even down to food, which has always been neglected. And it's just like, it's just not here to help. You can't go to prison. I'm not going to say that because if you're a strong individual and you go to prison, you find yourself, that's amazing because you're not going to go back. But recidivism is real, especially when you don't have the resources inside or outside to keep you from there. But yeah, let me be
Thank
quiet.
you. No,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you, Inno. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to pass on to Jeff to answer this question. And then, I'm going to combine a couple questions around parole so we can talk about that too. Because time is just going by and I could listen to y'all all night, to be honest, but it moves quickly. So yeah, Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about, mental health, drug addiction, and how the criminal legal system impacts that?
Terms of, I'll just deal with the mental health aspect of that. So I think I saw a lot of people incarcerated that really didn't belong in prison. They really should have, maybe been in mental institutions getting some type of mental health treatment, maybe outpatient program. Certainly, the level of quality of care, the mental health professionals there, I think they were kind of bottom of the barrel. They really didn't seem to me to have any type of real empathy. I think they would just saw prisoners there as numbers. They would just rush you in, rush you out to way too large a caseload. But beyond that, I feel like the medication that was given to prisoners that sometimes it would make them worse. I saw when people would stop taking their meds and they would seem to improve. I felt like medication, rather than the purpose of it being to treat the symptoms and underlying causes, mental health issues, that it was instead being utilized more just for more efficient prison management. And the last aspect of that I just want to mention, which ties back to solitary, which has gotten a lot of play tonight. Solitary confinement, it does cause mental health issues and exasperates pre-existing mental health issues.
Yeah, thanks so much for saying that. And I want to jump into just for a second and just say that, in some communities, I will say white communities, I will say wealthy communities, folks who do have mental health issues and folks who, are addicted to drugs receive support, receive help. I grew up in an area where folks always got rehab and got, their future was looked at. And here, just in Ulster County alone, we in 2019 we spent about $3 million on mental health, and around $20 million on jails. So we are not actually looking here at trying to support or address the issue or rehabilitate folks, but we're really just looking at this carceral system, which is what we're trying to change. So I know soon we're going to jump into folks about how we can take action, but I want to put a couple more questions out to Inno and Gordon and Jeff, and of course anyone else that wants to jump in. Marvin, I'm glad you're still here. I thought you had to go, so this is great. So anyone that wants to peek, speak up, and also I guess just keep it in mind that we do have just a short period of time, but just some of the challenges or barriers that we've witnessed specifically regarding the parole process, and I know that some of you have talked about that before. Or how has your record impacted you and your ability for stability? So I'll just put out both of those questions, let whoever wants to respond in that way. And to folks watching at home or wherever you are, as a reminder, we'll have a little Q&A at the end as well. So you can definitely drop some questions in the chat if you have any questions for our great panelists. So I don't know who wants to go first on either of those questions. Oh, go ahead.
I'll say something. Like parole, like from my experience with parole, because even though like I feel like my time was a lot shorter than a lot of people, they still came and see me. You know, they gave me, I guess, that benefit of the doubt. But also like they came up to my cell, woke me up, and they asked me, I think, about two or three questions, and then just walked away. Like I can't even remember the conversation, but and just left. You know, and I honestly, I think in my heart, I knew like I'm getting denied. So, you know, stinking thinking, but it's also reality of it is that like up until that point, I never really had thought about parole. But like at that time, I had a bunkie who had basically, she was 35 and she had basically been there since she was 15. And she had seen parole not too long before that and she got denied. Mind you, she's been sitting over there over 15 years. So I'm just like at this point, like, why do y'all even come around? And it's like with parole, it's just so because even say a person gets paroled, I feel like from the people that I've known that been on parole or on parole right now, there's always like, of course they got the papers on their back, but the officer who's in charge of their case is always on their back. I mean, like just waiting for them to trip and fall, to use that as an excuse to send them right back. And I'm not saying like, oh, people are coming home doing the same thing, but it's like if a person is actually trying, they don't even care about that. Like all they literally care about is just the fact that they have this control over you and you better do what they say. But again, I've never been on papers parole wise. So I mean I just knew during my time it just was a no go. But as far as like being incarcerated and what it has done, like as far as like applying for jobs or even like certain apartment complexes, like of course I've been denied. Like there was a job opportunity where I could have been a part of the union. And it's like I aced the interview, but when it came to like, hey, you've got a background though, we've definitely got to exclude you for this position. But it's like I've got the experience and I could do the work, but I just can't have a background. And I'm just like, well, I have a background because it's no need to lie about it. Run your name, run your social, they'll see, you know. But it's like it's affected a few things, and I can honestly say sometimes it's sad because I'm like, what I wish I've never did what I did to get where I was, but it's like it was all a part of my growth, you know. But that's why, like, I mean, I'm thankful for now, or I'm thankful for even being there because by being incarcerated, I found my love for farming, you know, and as they tried to use that as a tool to break a person in, but that's where I found my freedom. And by doing that, I just took those skills with me and I'm making the best of it. Like I always feel like there's oh, I'm sorry. Is it time?
Well, I do want to pass on to other
Go
folks.
ahead.
I'm so
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I feel
No, it's
like I said I
fine.
could listen, and I'm so glad you're talking about all of this, and even mention how the impact, because that's what clean slate is talking about too, is like trying to give everyone that clean slate when you come out. I don't know, Gordon
No,
or Jeff or Marvin.
I just want to say like few things. Like I witnessed again firsthand the parole process for many individuals. You know, I was fortunate enough to be granted my first parole hearing, but the process it was something that I would never forget. And it's almost like was talking about like the notion of people been denied. So you go in with this mentality, I'm gonna get denied, I'm gonna get denied, and like you have no hope when you go in. And my parole, it was crazy because it was scheduled for one day. Then we sat there all day, nothing. Oh, yeah, I gotta come back tomorrow because they just too late. Okay, we come back the next day. We wait from like 8 in the morning to like 6 at night, just sitting there. So you automatically have these feelings like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get denied because it's not even going well. And so you like this is bad. But when I went in there, one of my friend went with me. He got postponed to the next day. So it was like 3 days later. It's like you losing hope each day. So that process is a process that drains the person. And what's crazy too, as on the flip side, you speak about clean slate. It's so interesting, right? Because I earned my GED to my master's in prison. And so when I came home, it's like, I'm not too good for anything. So I'm like, I need a job. All right, I've been trying for other jobs. Let me go try for a job at like Target or something like that. And it was interesting. It's like you have a criminal record, not the education level. Like you are way beyond our job qualifications, but no, you have a record. So that was the thing that they look for, and that was so interesting. It's like, how is that possible? Even in, I don't want to, no job is below me, but it's like, even in a job where I'm like saying, just give me wherever. I stand in front and move carts. You telling me still no because I have a criminal record, and that's so interesting to me. I couldn't believe it. It kind of like blew my mind. And I was like, this can't be true, but this is reality. This is where we live, and this is some things that have to be changed.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I see Marvin.
I think someone else is going to go. Is that Rose? That's right.
Yeah, I think Jeff Rose is going to come on in a second. But
Okay,
Jeff, you have
then.
an answer, or Marvin, you go.
Then I'll go. No problem. I can identify definitely. What Gordon said, what Eno said, and you know how a record impacts me personally. Um, I've been denied jobs, and you know what? I kind of expected it because you know what? There's like, okay, there's this big stigma attached to a person that's done time, that's been convicted of a crime, and supposedly has paid their debt to society, and goes back out and tries to, reacclimate themselves, to get reintegrated into society and make a success out of their lives. But in New York State and many states across the country, those records, they will follow you closer than your luggage at the airport, right? Your luggage will get lost, but these records never will. No matter what, you're gonna have to fight these things. And I might be a couple of weeks or a couple of days older than most of you on this call, right? So I remember days when where you could be creative, right? You could be creative with an interview or an application or something. And like one of the things we used to do back in the days, and I'm not going to say how long ago, but when the question came up, right, of that little box that says, "Have you ever been convicted of a crime?" Right, and we used to check off yes, right, and they'll say describe it, right, and I used to say, what was it? DWI, right? So, lots of people say, okay, well, DWI is not that bad. You didn't kill anybody, hurt anybody. But, and then, what DWI actually meant was we'll discuss with interviewer, when they asked what it meant, right? So I will discuss with interviewer, right? And there were little tricks we used to use. And if you had to go get fingerprinted, you put a little crazy glue on your fingertips and it wouldn't come back your name or something. You come back with a clean record. But those days are long gone. Those days are long gone. And with the introduction of technology and the internet and facial recognition and press the button to find out what your whole life story is on Google. On Google, anybody can find out what's going on right now. It impacts you so negatively that you are strangled. I have not only seen, I have experienced such frustration trying to get back into a job. And the thing about it is, if we do get jobs, we're usually underhired, underpaid, and overworked, and these little minimum wage jobs that people will treat you like crap because you need it so badly, And even though like Gordon has a master's degree and he wanted to push parts around at Target, but this is where, the desire to do right is within us. But the actuality is that people are not trying to give us a chance to do so. I have witnessed many a man that said, okay, well, I'm going out and do the right thing. 5-6 months of being broke, of having nothing, of going hungry, of not being able to provide for their families, not able to change a pair of shoes over this time. And not that, all those things are so such a priority. But when a person cannot provide for themselves, they're going to revert back to what they know. So with those opportunities blocked for us, the person goes back to what they know. They get them and they recidivate. And I've seen it over and over again. So what the clean slate legislation does, right? It eliminates the ability for employers or for people who are seeking housing. It eliminates the ability for those people to access these records. Now, if anybody's going for like a position where they're dealing with children or has to be licensed or has to be fingerprinted, now that's a different process that they would go to. But for the general, if you're going for a job interview, those records would not be available for people to discriminate you against. This is the clean slate legislation that we're pushing for, and that's what this state needs. That's what people need. That's the opportunity that people who are returning with every good intention in their hearts to make a clean start. We're going to give them the clean slate. So this legislation is vitally, vitally important.
Thank you so much, Marvin. And Jeff, I don't want you to feel rushed. We have no questions out in Facebook land yet. So we got a little bit of time to mess with our agenda. So Jeff, go ahead. Any thoughts you want to add to this?
Just that when deserving applicants get turned down for parole, then, excuse me, not turned down for parole, but turned down for jobs, we're making it much more likely that, the temptation is going to increase for them to return back to crime. And then we're going to, then again, instead of someone paying into the tax base, we're going to be paying $72,000 a year to incarcerate them, and we're going to have possibly have a new set of victims.
Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you everyone for all you've said. I wonder if anyone has any other, last minute thoughts about, some of the challenges or barriers to parole, or, how we've been impacted by this criminal legal system. Because, folks have heard about what we're fighting for and why it's important. And I'm going to turn it over in a bit to folks to talk about how we actually win. But I want to see if anyone else has any last thoughts.
Just want to say two things, Charlie. One thing, because Eno brought it up earlier, so he's talking about rehabilitation, and this is what the system's supposed to be geared to. But I always challenge that notion because I always tell people like the prefix is to redo and to start anew. So if a person has never been rehabilitated in the first place, how are you going to rehabilitate him? Therefore, so my question to people all the time was, the system is not designed for this. So what is the system really designed for? Because it doesn't teach you these vital lessons that you need in life. And also, people got to understand that mass incarceration doesn't just consist of the prison system, as you know, through every justice roadmap and everything else that I've been working on. It also consists of detention centers. It also consists of what people not realizing reentry organizations, because there's all a part of this whole coalition of mass incarceration, because certain reentry organization profits from and monopolize the system because they're a part of this whole concept of mass incarceration. So they reap the benefits of putting people in prison. So people don't understand how far this extends. And so when you decarcerate, you remove those barriers, those entities that take away, again, from our communities, whether it's money, it's the people, it's the intelligence, it's the knowledge, it's the culture, it's the tradition, it's everything that you're removing. You all are part of this system, and the system needs to be broken down, and something new needs to arise from it. But it can only happen with the collective thinking of positive individuals that striving for good things, and this is what we're here for.
Preach, Gordon. Preach. You just tie it up with a little bow. Pretty magical. Quoting Lisa Roya here. So yeah, oh my gosh, thank you everyone for all the information that you shared tonight, about the bills, about what's happening. And we're gonna drop some more links into the chat on Facebook, ways for you to connect. And what I'll just pause for now and pass things over to some members of the Rise of Kingston Criminal Justice Circle to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about how we're going to win this, how we're going to take action. And I think we're starting with Rose.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rose Cherry. My pronouns are she, her. I'm active in a number of circles, and most recently, I'm a member of the newly formed Stewardship Circle at Rise of Kingston. I come from a community that is overly policed and have been directly impacted by the prison industrial complex. Having my father being incarcerated for the majority of my life, he passed away when I was 15, along with many other family members, and dealing with the fallout and the effects that linger as a result of their incarceration. The constant violence that we're subjected to surrounds us just like the air we breathe. So that's why I'm a part of this work. So Lisa, Miss Ann, and I are now going to give you some actionable steps that you can take in promoting this work towards decarceration and liberation. The first one I will share with you all is an action which is aptly named Freedom Hour. So tomorrow, April 15th, from 12 to 1 p.m., we're asking that you make a call and state your support to pass elder and fair and timely parole. We're asking that you call Senate Majority Leader Stuart Cousins at 518-455-2585, and also make a call to Assembly Speaker Hasty at 518-455-3791. Yeah, thanks for this conversation. It's necessary, and I'm going to pass it over to Miss Ann.
All right, as Miss Ann is just figuring out the text.
Hold it.
There we go. All right.
There you go. My name is Ann, and I am a member of Engine in the new Jim Crow Action Network, and I have a blurb about that. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Where did I put it? Here we go. And in the new Jim Crow Action Network is a group of Hudson Valley residents working locally to end the era of mass incarceration in this country. And we stand for an end to the wasteful and failed war on drugs, unaccountable private for-profit prisons, into jail expansion in Dutchess County and all new prisons nationwide, discriminatory sentences, stop and frisk and other racial profiling, excessive use of force and other forms of police brutality, full restoration of all civil rights, including voting rights, regardless of a person's prior convictions, full funding for programs that assist those being released from incarceration. And Engine does a lot of mutual aid. And presently, the Poughkeepsie Engine is doing court watch. And I am here to remind people that yesterday was Parole Justice Advocacy Day. Did we know that? Well, across New York State, people are meeting with elected officials to tell them that we must pass the fair and timely parole and elder parole for this session. Please call Senator Hinchy. We saw her yesterday. Senate Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, and Assembly Speaker Hasty. Is it Hasty or Hesty? Hasty. Okay, do you guys want the numbers or?
I am trying my best to get all the numbers in. My computer is doing some whole thing. I'm putting them in,
Okay.
trying to put them
I
into
can
the
put them
comments.
in.
But you can definitely read them out loud, and folks can grab a pen for now. But I promise that we do have graphics that have gone out over the past few days. So in reality, if you go to Rise Up Kingston on any of our pages, Facebook, Insta, you can find them. But I was trying to be slick and get them into the comment thread, and it just has not happened
All
yet.
right. I'll be right back, though. Something's burning.
So we'll pass it on to Lisa to talk about grassroots. Something's burning. I hope Miss Ann
We
is
are grassroots.
okay.
That's right. Looks like
Lisa, you want to jump in? Oh, wait.
I think Miss Ann is saying something.
You're muted, Miss Ann.
You're muted.
The number for Henchy, oh, wait a minute, let's start back. Assembly Speaker Heastie is 518-855-3791. Stuart Cousins, the majority leader, is 518-455-2585. And Miss Henchy, where is she at? Hold it. Henchy is, the local number is 845-331-3810. And the Albany number is 518-455-2350. And also Assemblyman Cahill. His local number is 845-338-9610. The Albany number is 518-455-4436. And these are the people that we need to get in touch with for this session. I'll pass it on to Miss Lisa. Am I supposed to pass it on?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'm Lisa Royer, she, her. I'm definitely honored to be in this space with all of you. I'm the criminal justice organizer for Rise Up Kingston and co-founder for Youth for Change. I'm a mother of a police brutality victim here in Kingston. That's how I started doing the work. I'm engaged in this work because we all need to be, honestly. We need to be because our children are depending on us to be involved in it. Our grandchildren, their lives depend on it, right? Their lives depend on us changing this messed up system. For years, I sat by while I felt voiceless as I watched the system hurt and even kill friends and family members of mine. I'm grateful that I found a way to make change, and I just want everybody that's watching to know that there's nothing special about any of us, right? We're all just show up every single day and learn and unlearn every single day, and you can do it too. So yes, make the calls that Rose and Ann just told you to do. Remind the elected officials that they work for us. And I can tell you some other ways that you can get deeper involved. If you live in the Hudson Valley, or your organization is in the Hudson Valley, and if your organization would like to join these other badass organizations that make up Decarcerate Hudson Valley, Callie's gonna drop the link for that in the Facebook chat. We need, I think it was Marvin that said earlier, there's 200 organizations that are working together on Justice Roadmap, but we need as many as possible because we have to keep pushing these folks. And if you live in or around Kingston and you or a family member have been impacted by the justice legal system, the criminal legal system, there's no justice, right? The criminal legal system, you can email me at lisa@riseupkingston.org, and we can figure out a way for you to be involved in the criminal justice circle. And I don't know if there's any questions in the chat for anyone. We have a few more minutes. You want to take it over, Callie?
Yeah, there aren't any questions in the chat. I do want to uplift. Noelle also was mentioning another advocacy day that's coming up, statewide advocacy day. Maybe Noelle, you could jump in and talk about that as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kelly. So we had a really great, thank you, Miss Anne, for bringing up yesterday's advocacy day. It was faith-centered, about redemption. We had faith leaders from across the state sort of talk about what it means to have the intersection of faith and redemption and transformation. And sort of leading with that, we're continuing next week on the 22nd. Again, it'll be sort of the same format of an all day. And it's in honor of National Crime Victims Week. So about survivor justice. So many people who are touched by the criminal legal system are also victims themselves of crimes. And so we want to honor that. We want to honor victims. We want to honor, the pain and the resiliency of survivors, as well as, victims of crimes in lots of ways. So it's parole justice and survivor justice, expanding pathways to hope, healing, and accountability. And I will put, there's a RSVP form for folks that they want to sign up. I'll put them in the Facebook comments. But just sort of what Inno and Gordon and so many of the other speakers spoke about tonight, of the pain and the trauma that so many folks feel, and it's not addressed, and then you're put into the system. It only sort of perpetuates that cycle of harm and pain, as well as sort of when people get quote unquote justice, families are still ripped apart. The families of those who committed the harm are still harmed. So it's this never ending cycle of violence that, we want to make sure that we honor and uplift, and make sure that folks are aware and continue this education of how we can overcome this, and what accountability means, and what healing means, and what community means, and all of that stuff. So I'll put this in the chat. Thanks, Kelly, for letting me talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here and talking and being a part of things tonight, and spreading the word, because so many folks, I'll say politics is meant to be confusing. It's supposed to keep us out, and the personal is political. And every single thing that we do, and every step we take is connected to laws in our community, and things that are unjust can still be legal, and it is up to us to change those laws. And it's up to us to come together and organize and demand and push for things that we know are right, and to not play this little game of like, what can we do, or maybe we can change it, but to really like speak truth to power and say we know what's right, and we're going to make these changes. And so there's a lot of different changes across the state, within the Justice Roadmap platform. Again, fair and timely parole, elder parole, the clean slate package, that we are pushing for, and that we will win. But we need each and every person to step up and participate, to make calls, because it's very, very easy for our elected officials to show up and say they care, but to not actually take the steps that they need to take to change the lives. And as many people, I will just make this connection, as many people are watching, trials of Chauvin connected to George Floyd's murder, the criminal legal system doesn't start harming people when a police officer kills someone. It starts harming people a long time before it. And so it's really, really important for us to understand and the system that we are trying to change, and to push things and make these changes. And specifically, I will say that, there are a lot of pieces of legislation that we are fighting for. There's also local campaigns to push for defunding and moving resources into community support. So you should definitely get involved, be involved. I still don't see any questions in the chat. I did drop in the Phone numbers for Freedom Hour. Again, tomorrow, Freedom Hour from 12 to 1 is when you should call. And then the numbers as well for Hinchy and Senator Hinchy and Assemblyman Cahill. Noel dropped in some of the People's Campaign for Parole Justice information. So if you want to know how to get involved, it's all in the comment thread now. No excuses. It's time to step up and make sure that, you know, we bring our people home, that we make our communities whole again, that we bring the nutrients back into our community. To quote Gordon, we're gonna make shirts out of that. But that we can really make sure that everybody has a chance of community care, because nobody benefits from being thrown in a cage. Nobody benefits from being harmed. Nobody benefits, you know, from any of this. And we need to start looking at a completely different system to take care of our people. As Stanley said at the beginning, public safety is not our criminal legal system. Public safety is something completely different. So all we got to change is everything, and we can do it. So thank you everyone for joining in on the panel. Thank you everyone for watching. Share this with friends, family. Make sure you make the phone calls, join the advocacy days. Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great. Wouldn't want to miss it. I had to reschedule a meeting just so I could stay. So
Yes.
this conversation was fire, and I love being here in this space. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone, and good night.